Welcome to recap of game number 8 of 9 in the Maya Chess Open in Porto, Portugal. I head into round 8 playing against this 2100 from España. Okay, so I have the black pieces and my opponent has the white pieces, and a little backstory to this saucy game is that I prepared all night and all morning against what he had in the database, which was e4. And so I arrive at the board, my opponent arrives at the board, we shake hands. By the way, he said, I'm a fan before the round, which was kind of crazy. And we shake hands and immediately he goes d4 on me. Like, did me dirty. I was angry, I was frustrated because it's so many hours of work behind the scenes of a chess game. And then the chess game happens and then you end up in something in which you are not comfortable to play against, hence with no preparation. And here we go. So I go d5, knight f3, knight f6, c4, e6, and after g3, then I realize what he had prepared. g3 is usually revelatory that you're gonna play a Catalan opening. The Catalan is a really good tool with the white pieces and is used for a lot of high-level wins at the Super GM level. We saw it being played a lot at the World Chess Championship in 2022, I believe. Immediately, I have no prep against the Catalan. What I have is what I'm sure he prepped against me in my chess.com account, in my ChessBase account. So I'm very nervous here. What do I do? Every move I play, he plays even faster, less than 30 seconds per move. So then castles, and here I play bishop d6, and after b3, my opponent's going into a line with like bishop b2 and playing this very slowly, objectively trying to grind me out here. Usually white goes like knight e2 with queen c2 setup and tries to push for e4. But this b3 setup had me thinking, what should I really do against b3? It's very interesting. And so in this position, I go with knight e4, which is surprisingly the second best move, breaking the typical rule of the opening that you shouldn't move your piece twice in the opening. And so now, okay, I took like 8 minutes on this, which is not typical for the 7th move of an opening. And so I'm already down to 1 hour and 20 minutes, and I have to play the next, 33 moves. My opponent goes bishop b2. First time of the game, by the way, that he doesn't bullet out his move. So I was kind of satisfied to know that he was also, giving, like he was out of his prep. Knight e4's purpose was to get my opponent confused and out of his preparation. And I did that effectively. Bishop e2, and now I go h5. Like, I'm doubling down on my already dubious, perhaps, move. This move signals to my opponent that I'm not castling, because then this pawn would be extremely weak. Instead, I'm signaling that this is a full-on war. I'm coming in with my pieces, and this rook staying on the h-file by not castling will support this pawn to h4 and probably open up the h-file for the opening of this rook. Added to the fact that this queen is coming in, added to the fact that this knight is into the attack, and added to the fact that this bishop can be an important attacking help. h5 is played. My opponent takes 14 minutes. Goes under my time. He took more time than me. So I counter-prepped him, if you will. Knight d2, striking my knight in the center and threatening to remove a key attacking piece. My objective still remains the same. I go h4 to try to open up the h-file, and if you take my knight, I'm just happy because I take back and attack your knight on tempo. Now, this did happen, but I want to give some variations that I calculated beautifully that would have happened if knight takes on h4. Here I had prepared rook takes h4, sacrificing the exchange, g takes is pretty forced, otherwise I'm a piece up, and then queen takes, threatening checkmate on h2, helped again by my bishop. I told you that bishop is fire. Here white have several moves, a lot of which don't work. If h3, so I have no checkmating threat anymore, now I have queen f4, sniping with that nice angle, that h2 checkmate square again. And now the white pieces are trapped. If you play f3 to try to get out of this, like let's say queen check and then king f2, now I can play e3 taking up the exit square and threatening queen h2 checkmate at once. Here the white pieces are done for after, let's say, rook e1, check, king f1 is forced, and then bishop g3. And the idea is that I have bishop f2 and queen g1 checkmate. That's inevitable. Okay, and if, let's say, white goes f3. Here I have mate in 4 moves with bishop takes h2 check. Again, I'm taking up the exit square, so the king is forced to h1. Check again, 2 possibilities. Either you go here and it's checkmate, or you follow through with the proper mate in 4. Bishop h3 giving a bishop, king g1 is forced, and then queen h2 checkmate. The third is rook e1. But after bishop takes h2, king f1, and e3, I can't believe I saw this in calculation. Like legit dropped dead for a second there. Skip the heartbeat. The idea is to open up this and threaten mate. You can't defend it unless you take my pawn, and now you've created a wall against yourself as the white pieces. And I can go in with just knight f6. Apparently queen f6 also works. So queen f6 check, bishop f3, I didn't see this by the way. Queen g5 threatening mate, bishop here, and then queen takes h3 and we're threatening checkmate in 1 move. Though anyways, after takes, I had prepared knight f6. Such a sick move. You cannot defend against knight g4 and queen f2 checkmate coming in. You can't. If you take the bishop to use this g4 square up, I go queen g3 and we're mating. And if you try to defend with your queen, let's say queen d3, knight g4 threatens mate and you can't do anything against this. So I was pretty hyped to play this singular variation and very surprised when my opponent played knight e5. I embedded the fact that my opponent would play a mistake, which is a recurring mistake I've done several times in this tournament that I learned from. So looking at more than 1 move for your opponent is super important. So after knight e5, which doesn't look that good, okay, you're threatening my weak looking pawn on e4, but other than that, this knight is not that dangerous, and I just went queen g5 here. The idea is that if you take my pawn, I'm more than happy to just take this first, h takes, and now we can take, avoiding all forks here on my queen and knight, because I could take this g3 pawn with check. It's kind of like not an enticing pawn to take. Instead, my opponent offers a queen trade, because they're getting attacked and they just want to get out of this mess. And this is kind of rejoiceful for me because we're both at 1 hour spent after 11 moves. We spent 30 minutes each on 11 moves. Literally, you guys, people are like in the end game by now, like 25 moves in, 30 moves in the tournament room by this hour that has passed by. Meanwhile, we're still on move 11. And I thought here whether or not I had good or substantial attacking possibilities if I kept the queens on the board, but I just saw g4 and after queen back, even though this defends this, h3 kind of locks up the position. Takes, f takes. F takes is not too good because the h pawn you'll see is very sore in this game. But anyways, now I defend my pawn on e4, and my pawns, although it looks kind of crappy pawn structure, it kind of solves itself after knight takes, bishop takes. And now I gain, well, we still both have the bishop pair, but my bishop pair is looking very nice, and my pawn structure is kind of making a dent into their pawn structure. So we're seeing this here with the backwards pawn on e2. Furthermore, this h-pawn, which seems, you know, extended on the west side of the board, is kind of stumped given my bishop takes g3 possibility. And I increased that after e3 by playing rook h7 to defend this and get out of the x-ray of this nice bishop so I can push this g5 pawn, and that dream comes true after I double rooks and I play g5. g5 I had calculated for a long time because you have to be okay with this variation. c5 attacking my bishop. Bishop only has 2 squares, bishop c7, and now d5. So d5 threatening the exchange here on h8 and threatening the fork of my king and bishop. Now I had played bishop c7 instead of bishop b8 so that this can seem more forcing for my opponent. Therefore they're more likely to play it because I wanted to play into this. After d5, I take. Brilliant move. Sacking the exchange, and here I have a pawn and a dark squared bishop for a rook. But look at my extra pawn. It's a center pawn that's very, very solidly placed with a nice pawn structure, playing against the close position of these rooks that don't know where to go. Meanwhile, I have the very only bishop pair on this board that can really help support this d4 push or this f4 push. Meanwhile, this extended on the west side h2 pawn is quite weak. So bishop e2, and my plan here is, as I told you, to push d4 or f4. Whichever one I can do, it would give me connected pass pawns, to which this can be extremely dangerous. my opponent plays king f2, which I was about. If I'm being honest, mistake number one I make in this game. So here, the black pieces have time. I have a ton of time here. I can play slowly, I can play this game out. White aren't forcing anything anytime soon. And in fact, all the engine move suggestions are like super slow moves. King f6, bishop e6, etc. Instead, I go for f4, which is the third best move. Like this is the fourth or third in a row, I believe. Takes, takes, and the idea of f4, which I really like, is that I'm playing against this h2 pawn, putting on the fact that it's just weak and it will never be strong, and which gives this to me, given my already pawn up, a second pawn that is now connected, right? So now I have this pawn and this pawn against this pawn, when you think about unbalances in the position. And by taking here, this makes this pawn and this pawn against this pawn. My position looks really nice after something like d4, d3, hiking down those pawns. And so, okay, I'm attacking this rook here on tempo, which was an extra little bonus. And after rook h1, here is a serious misstep. I feel like, since my bishop left this g7 square, that this rook g7 check is coming in hot. Like, I'm in danger here. Little to be known that the best idea to pursue here is actually just stumping this pawn on h2, which in an effect stumps the rook on h1. And after rook g7, which wins my pawn, black have king f6, rook takes. We do not care about losing this thing. And we go d4 here. But okay, this is really hard to see in the future, and I give myself some credit that I went with bishop e5. Kind of a patient move actually here, which is ironic because I complained about being not patient before. Taking up the g7 square and being very preventative. And after h4 here, white are bringing down a pawn, which will become a very valuable piece of peace later on in this game. And so I go bishop d4 check, and I go on a side quest to win a third pawn. This was a mistake. Although it's still like small advantage for the black pieces, the best move here actually is d4. I don't have time to take that pawn, because that pawn, that h pawn, is rushing down the board and is going to be dangerous by the second. Bishop d4 check, king e1, and I take. And after h5, I have to find a very precise solution to stop this pawn. And I played the drawing move bishop e3 here, but the best move was bishop f5. Very hard to find once again. Bishop here lets rook f1 on tempo, bishop e6, and you kind of have to play really well. Check. You have to play really precise. Oh, okay, and now this is just a draw, so I'm glad I played bishop e3. Bishop e3 just takes up the h6 square directly, and I liked bishop e3. Of course, I had calculated this moves beforehand, but I liked bishop e3 because the idea to save the a7 pawn when their other rook comes in is also nice. It's also a little comfort. Rook g7, king e8. I don't know why I didn't like these two. There's just like check, and if king up, like it lets h6, because the rook is newly there on tempo, and I just didn't like the idea of this pawn being strong. And in fact, I have to find bishop e8 in this position, only move to draw it. So it's really not obvious. I'm happy I went king e8. Now the rook has to go to g6 to threaten this, and I have a move. So it's not on tempo, it's not rook g6 check anymore. Big difference. Now I can go bishop h6 and completely blockading this pawn. And so now I'm very happy about this position because my mission is successful. I can stop these pawns while my pawns can just march down the board, and white have made no efforts to stop these pawns. Rook g1 is played, so I go with king e7. Small advantage for black, but my advantage was bigger if I had gone with some earlier plans and bishop e6 before pushing f4. That was a major pulse. Now it's small advantage for the black pieces because I haven't mobilized my pawns. I'm too slow with this. My pawns are still in the same structure since the beginning of this endgame. Bishop g4, and now I have to keep the bishops, apparently, and give check here. This is the best continuation. Like, this is hard to believe that this is better for black than what I played here, which was bishop e3, attacking this rook. And if you get this rook off of this h5 pawn, let's say not going rook h1, which was played, here I win the pawn, and it's such a valuable pawn. Here I would be willing to say that black is winning. So of course they defend the pawn on h5, and now I can't take anymore because the pawn is defended, but I still take once, and now I go king f6. The idea is pushing pawns. rook g6 check, king f5, and then rook g7. The engine gives us a equal endgame, 0, 0, 0. So I go d4, rook takes b7, and then d3. Finally hiking up my pawn, and as previously promised, the bishop on e3 defends a7 pawn. The only problem is this bishop is kind of it's kind of a blocker of this pawn on e4 right here. So rook e7 is potentially the second most beautiful move my opponent plays. The idea is to threaten rook here, and my king has to go out west, which it doesn't want to do because I give the e4 pawn. And if on check that is threatened, I go bishop f4 blocking, then there's the nice tactic rook f7, hitting my king and bishop and winning a full piece. So I have to play this very smartly. Only one move is right here, bishop f4, which after rook f1, giving the piece is the best thing against these two passed pawns. And here there's only one move to draw, literally only one move. And if you don't find it here, there's a chance that you lose. And I play king d4 here, which is a mistake and is a life-ending mistake. You see, my mistake here, of course I'm calculating this entire game, like literally did not get off my chair, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. I had embedded that my opponent's only move was a mistake. So to block something like king e3, you could play like something like king d2. But this is very much at least draw by rook h2 check. And if your king goes back, let's say king c1, I just pick up the a pawn, and black has an easy draw here. Like I'll win b3 and I'll have a ton of pawns for your rook. At least a draw, I could win this. And I had calculated that this was also the possibility, and here I'm just like winning after takes, and now I have the beautiful e3 check. King moves to defend, and after king takes, pawn takes, king takes, and king c3, I'll just go king c2, and this pawn is home run. Unfortunately, white found this move in like 3 minutes. Like super impressive. White to play and win. King d1. King e1 d1 is the death of me in this game. King d1 doesn't go on this second rank, refuses the rook h2 resource, while liberating the e1 square for this rook to double pin, absolute pin my e4 pawn and win it. Crazy resource. And here, I think for 24 minutes about all lines. And suddenly this king d1 goes from equal to +4 for white. And literally I calculated 1, 2, 3, I calculated c5, I calculated a5 with a4 plan, I calculated this as, not this, sorry, this 7, 8 moves in the span of 25 minutes and going deep into each one of them, which is why what I came up with was so bad because I was so discouraged because actually nothing works in this position. Just by the way, black gets an easy draw with e3. Because we are taking all the squares here by force, this king can never be a tangible defensive piece, and instead is a weakness because I have back rank things if your rooks disconnect and your rooks get off of the first rank. So it always keeps a rook glued or protected on this first rank, which is a really good resource. And so let's say rook f7. This is what I was scared of. Like your rook goes to the 7th rank, just gives checks to my king. But here I have king d4 only move. You can go like check, king c3. You can go like, let's say rook c7 to attack the pawn with check. Rook h6. And here, let's say rook e7 to attack, rook h2. And if you take, I go king c2, and now I'm threatening this, and you have to sack a rook. A lot of the lines eventually give that white just like gets 2 pawns for the rook, and after king takes, this is a draw, although this is a hard draw to draw for white. Hard draw to draw for white. But yeah, I went with king e3, I knew it didn't work. Rook f8, and then I went like with d2. There were many lines here. Let's say the a5 plan, the idea is rook here to attack. Let's say I defend with rook e5. Now my rook is off the h5 square, so I can't go rook h2 check. And now king e2, king d2. And this king gains a lot of power because it intercepts this e3 square and liberates this first rank. So now I go like a4, something like this. Rook c1 because the rank is liberated. takes, and inevitable is rook c4 things, and eventually either I lose the pawn, so let's say c5, check, king forced back, and now the king gains a lot of space, all because my pawn is not originally on e3. Like, it's a super deep idea. My opponent saw this super... I'm falling. Okay, I just fell. Let me just catch up here. I go king e3, and now I go e2. The idea is that I'm threatening this, but I know it doesn't work. Rook ff2. And after rook e5 defending, just rook e2 check, and now I give the pawn. And after the rooks are traded off, my opponent just very cozy separates my king from the two pawns. And I will eventually gain, you know, I wanted something like this in this endgame. This is the only reason why I kept playing. Because there are some cool checkmates to end the game from my opponent. So king a2, king here, pawn here, and then you can go this. And this is like a forced zugzwang, forcing my king here, and then you win with checkmate. So I wanted to kind of do that, which would have been fun. But my opponent was just so cold with b4. The idea is that on king b3, trying to win this last pawn, just rook takes. And like, I literally have no counterplay. So my opponent just played a better game. And overall, I had advantage at the beginning of that endgame. Like, my decision to go into that endgame was fire. My bishop pair, my passed pawn possibility, all great. Limiting the h2 pawn, all great. But what let go of this game was literally impatience, pushing f4 way too soon. That was number one. And number two was missing that e3 move. Sometimes it boils down to one move in the endgame, or else you're toast. And that's what happened here. See you tomorrow.